Hi everyone, how are you? What I will do is we're going to show you a clip of Sally when Sally Kirkland accepted the Legend Award for Ray Bradbury, and as Anthony is preparing Sally to come on and speak with you, we wanted to share with you this clip when right before she was accepting the award for Ray Bradbury, because he had just passed away the week before he was to accept it. And so knowing that she knew him, and you'll hear this story soon, we asked her to accept it. So here is a video, it's loading, and here is a video of Sally Kirkland sharing an audition process with Ray Bradbury. Here we go.
My very first film audition, movie for Hollywood, was 1966, and David O. Selznick brought me by the hand to Francois Truffaut to be seen for Fahrenheit 451. And I lost to Julie Christie, as you probably figured out. But that was my very first Hollywood movie audition, and it was terrifying. And it's absolutely mind-boggling to have Ray Bradbury, Francois Truffaut, introduced by David O. Selznick.
Well, there you have it. That was Sally Kirkland live. The gentleman left of her was Duncan Rouleau. He actually is the creator of a very famous Nickelodeon series for those of you with kids, Ben 10. Hey, Sally, thank you to you and Antonia for getting through this. So I greatly appreciate it. You look gorgeous as always. So if you don't mind, I'm going to start with some of the questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
All right, one of them is, what has been your biggest career challenge so far?
Well, to remain an actress for 61 years.
Well, we were also giving a testament to you on how your business acumen, your talent, your tenacity, those strung together help you to to achieve that and to attain that. And everyone knows that if they want to ask you a question, they can click the raised hand and do so. So here's another question for you. Do you have a favorite role that you played in any of your films?
Yeah, 1987, Anna, for which I got the Oscar nomination and the Golden Globe and the Independent Spirit Award and the LA Film Critics Award and the Women Film Award. And my name is Anna Rokova. I come from Prague, Czechoslovakia. What you want? I don't want to talk about my personal life. You give me the script.
So tell me, for those that haven't watched Anna, who was Anna? What was she like? What was her embodiment? That you resonated so much with? Because obviously, you're brilliantly talented, but also everyone else saw that, and you got accolades for it.
Well, Anna was based on a Polish actress named Elżbieta something, and she was very famous in Poland in the 50s. And she came to America, and she couldn't get arrested. Her accent was so thick, and nobody would hire her. And a young Polish actress named Joanna Pakula knew of her work in Poland and attached herself to her, and more or less learned everything from Elżbieta. And Elżbieta helped make her a star. So when it came time to doing this film, Agnieszka Holland, who wrote it, who had been a Golden Globe winner for Angry Harvest, and Jurek Bagajewicz, the director, both Polish, they did not want to cast Elżbieta playing herself because she was very difficult to work with. So they changed the whole story to Czechoslovakia so that Elżbieta couldn't sue them for saying, "This is my life." And when I heard about it, it said in the breakdown, an actress who can do a Polish accent. And I told my manager, "Tell them I can. How many weeks do I have?" And they said 2 weeks. And I said, sure. So I went to the library. I listened to Meryl Streep and Sophie's Choice. I eventually combined German and Hindu to come out with my accent, and then was told that they were changing it to Czech. So I made a few altercations. I I got the doorman in my building in New York, who was Czech, to come to my apartment, and I gave him a bottle of wine, and I turned on the tape recorder, and I said, "Please, Cleo, please read all of these lines with your Czech accent." So I took him through the entire script, and I had it on tape how a Czech sounded doing these lines by Agnieszka Holland. And yeah, that's basically how it started. And then we'd be on here for 2 hours if I told you the process of persuading the director that I was the right one, because he turned me down 3 times. But that happened.
I mean, I'd like to hear, how did you persuade him? I mean, that's tenacity, and at some point, it's like you're really risking it to go that one more time and say, hire me. So what do you think was the tipping point for that?
Well, I am perseverant, and that's a word that I would like younger people watching this to know about. I never take no for an answer. Um, I haven't taken no for an answer since I was 17, and probably before, because I started acting in high school. Because I was tall and a woman in a woman's school, I had to play men for 4 years, which gave me a certain power and strength playing men. But the bottom line is that when Yurik didn't think I was right, I began writing him letters how he would never find anyone better for the role than me. I sent him flowers. One day I waited out in the rain for him to come out of his office, and there I was, pitiful, saying, "Here I am. I'm your Anna. You won't find anyone better." And he kept rejecting me. And finally, it got to the point where I decided, well, I was just going to have to wait. And so I made arrangements to go to Australia to teach 100 acting students acting in something called Inside Acting Workshop. They'd each paid 150 to work with me, and I didn't want to disappoint them. There were 100 of them. So I was in the airport ready to get on a plane to go to Sydney, and I got a phone call from my agent saying, "Yurik Bagayevich wants to test you one final time." And I said, "Well, tell him I'm on my way to Australia. I can't let down these people. They've waited for months. Will he wait a week?" And the word came back, "Well, this is what you wanted. Don't you want to do it now? Can't you do it now?" And I said, "Well, no. These people have paid a lot of money. There's 100 of them. And I want to fulfill my commitment. I will be back in a week." Well, that was a huge gamble, which is something that an actor has to do throughout their career. The moment comes where you choose this or choose that, and you just go with your gut. So my gut said that I had begged him and begged him and begged him, and now I wasn't going to let down all of these young people. So I went, and I got a call just when I was coming back that he was waiting for me and that he wanted to test me with Paulina Porizkova, the top #1 model in the world. And she had already gotten the part of Christina. And he wanted me to come in and improvise with her. So I went in. We adored each other right away. And she had a huge gap in her teeth, which a lot of Eastern Europeans had. And I mean, when you see her in the movies, she's had caps put on. But so he said, "Would you two improvise?" So somehow Paulina and I heard or knew that his wife was divorcing him, the director. So we went around the room in a circle, which he asked us to do, improvising about how his wife was divorcing him. And he, of course, went into shock. How did we know that? What were we doing to him? But he got excited because this is the kind of thing that Anna in the script, who was very dominating and very perseverant, would do. And after a while, we started talking astrology, and I said, "You're an Aries, aren't you, Paulina?" And she said, "How did you know?" And I said, and she said, "You're a Scorpio." And I said, "Yes, how did you know?" So we bonded, and he took Paulina aside and he said, "Look, you guys are great together. Do you want to work with Sally Kirkland?" And she said, "Oh, yes, yes, could I?" And he said, "Well, So in that, she actually got me the part. In that moment, I got the role of Anna. And then when I did the role and kicked ass and tore the scenery down, when it came to the very first screening, a publicist named John Springer, who had handled Marilyn Monroe, Elizabeth Taylor, and all these, Betty Davis, Lillian Gish, And he saw it and he said to me, Sally, um, you can go for the Oscar with this film. And that blew my mind. And I said, John, I don't have the money to hire you, but let me see what I can do, because if you were in my corner, I think we can go for it. So what I did was I went to listen, all you guys, you SAG members, I went to the Screen Actors Guild after Federal Credit Union. I didn't have any money, but I did have 7,000. No, I got a loan with $50 for $7,000. And I have to backtrack. We had been to some festivals and
Mhm.
got some great feedback. And I ran into Rex Reed in the elevator, and he said, how can I see this movie you're telling me about? So I invited him to a screening. He was blown away. He stood up at the press conference at Cannes and said, I just saw the best film in the whole festival. Why isn't it in competition? And then he said, and this was the quote, Sally Kirkland eats Anna like raw steak and emerges an international star. And I said, Rex, can I use this? Can I use this for my ad? And he said, yes. And then one by one, people started getting in my grassroots campaign. Norman Mailer saw it and he gave me a quote, the writer. Um, Sheila Benson was the LA Film Critics, writer. And she saw it in a festival in Mill Valley and she flipped out. And she said, I'll give you a quote, but my article won't come out until the film opens. So I said, anything, one line, anything. So she gave me a great quote, etc. So I take out my full page ad, very small picture of me, all words, words, words. And a man named David Buntsman, who knew my manager, called him up and said, I just saw your client, Sally Kirkland, in Variety. This is incredible. How can I meet her? I want to help her. So I got together with David Buntsman. He had money. And he said, what do you need? And I said, I need someone to finance my ad campaigns, both in New York and LA, and Variety and The Hollywood Reporter. And he said, if I pay for that, will you go to Paris with me? And I said, wait, I have a boyfriend. I have a boyfriend. He said, no, that's okay. I'm not going to ask for sexual favors. Thank you, Lord. He said, you'll have your suite and I'll have mine. I just want to get to know you in Paris. And then when I come back, will you take me to Hollywood parties and introduce me to all of your illustrious friends? And I said, well, that's easy, sure. So that began the relationship where he would pay for my ads, which weren't incredibly expensive like the studio system, but they were whatever looked good in black and white. I couldn't afford color. And I would go to Variety and I would say, look, when do the studio ads come out for the Oscars? And they would tell me on such and such a date. And I would say, and when's the last one they put out? And they would tell me. So I would say, would you put my ad before the studios and after the studios? And they said, sure, we're on your side. So I got to know Variety and The Hollywood Reporter very well. And they ran these ads with all of these incredible quotes. And like I said, I didn't go big on pictures. I went big on words. And after a while, Martin Scorsese asked me what I did. And I said to him, forget the pictures, just do reviews. And he followed my advice. And somebody else, Costner, Kevin, when he did Dances with Wolves, he picked my brain. And I said, you're going to win the awards for this film. And he said, oh, no, I have another 10 years. No, you're going to win the awards for this story you told me. So when you do, just do ads with words, and a small picture. And both of them followed my advice and won the awards. And so back to John Springer and a man named Dale Olson in LA, I followed everything they told me to do. I went on every TV show, every radio show, every written print interview. So my life for a year, Maggie Wagner, who's on, was there with me. She can tell you I was in hyperdrive. I think I lost 15 pounds because I didn't eat. I was so excited with this building momentum of this campaign. Jump cut, when I win the Golden Globe, I'm standing outside waiting for my limo, and Jenna Rollins is standing next to me. And she said, congratulations. And I said, oh, Jenna, you're my favorite actress. I loved you in this and this and this. And she said, well, I have to confess, Sally, I didn't see your movie. And I said, oh. And she said, but I voted for you. And I said, really? And she said, yes, I voted for you because of your Oscar campaign.
That's amazing. See? It's support from your colleagues, it's tenacity, and it's never saying never, right? You got up
Right.
every day and you followed that dream and you put one foot in step of the other, and it was a fair deal. I mean, that's called sponsorship, or a benevolent, you know, um, person where they support your career, and maybe their perk is they get to go to the award show with you or whatever. I remember one time, Sally, you and I went to the night of 100 stars,
Mhm.
and we needed transportation, and one of my friends had a very, very rare car, and he was just so excited to take us, because he drove even though he has a driver. But it's things like that, right? People are excited about the work you've done, they're excited to help you, and they want to be part of the fun. And I don't know if you remember that night, but it was really, really, you came to my house, we got
Yeah, I
dressed, there was
remember
a
that
big
you dressed me
garden.
up. You dressed me.
Well, I will suggest to people that make sure you take a photo of yourself in the dress you put on, because that dress did not look good when it was photographed. It looked good in my mind. My dress. It looked amazing. But that was a really, really fun night. And it's things like that that they're kind of like the perk and the buzz of the business, just people that all love the same thing getting together and having a great time, no harm. So
Right on.
that's really good. Thank you so much for sharing that story. That's a great, great story. Um, there is a question that someone asked that we all have had time to reflect this last year, and now that it's 2021, do you have any set goals this year?
Well, the obvious one is to keep working and be a working
Mhm.
actress. I'm lucky in that the pandemic started in February. I was in Italy shooting a film called Final Code, and the pandemic started in northern Italy. And I turned on the TV, and all these doctors were saying people are dying. And I thought, oh my God. Luckily, I had antibiotics with me, and I took them, and I took 1,000 C every hour. And I got through the shoot, and then they were really saying northern Italy was the target place. And so I had this great guy, John Patrizzi, New York travel agent, and he got me on the last seat in the last plane to leave Italy before they weren't letting
Wow.
me out of the country. And I got back, and I was told, of course, that I had to quarantine for 2 weeks. And nobody would talk to me. Cody, who set us up today online, he wouldn't talk to me. He wouldn't see me for 2 weeks because I had just come from northern Italy where everybody was, sick. And
Because of the quarantine.
so then I did a film in July called Lilith, a short film, and went to Virginia and shot that. Came back, did a feature that somehow Screen Actors Guild allowed called Bobcat Moretti. Played Mrs. Moretti, great part. Shot that. Then I did another film. It's escaping me now. And I just finished a short called The Woman in the Room, based on Stephen King's short story, The Woman in the Room. So I did 4 films since the pandemic started. And I was supposed to shoot January 8th. That's 3 days ago and 4 days ago.
Hmm.
A lot of money. And Screen Actors Guild canceled it because of the pandemic. And so
Hmm.
I'm waiting to hear when they're going to let us shoot it. There hasn't been any word. What was your question?
No, no, so that's part of the answer of the question. So the question was, what is your goals for
Oh, my goal.
2021?
Well, my
Yeah.
goal is to do as many films as I can, or television shows. I want to say that Facebook is my best friend. I, a lot of times, don't wait for agents and managers. I do my own thing. So when I see that there's a filmmaker on Facebook who's talking about doing a film, I will write them and say, "Hi, my name is Sally Kirkland, Oscar nominee, Golden Globe winner. Is there a role in your film for me?" And they'll generally go into shock because they're not used to hearing
Yeah.
from people like me. And then I'll start a friendship. And the last 3 years, I would say 8 out of 10 films came from Facebook, came from, for instance, I saw that the guy who did, oh, Sally, don't have a senior moment. Maggie, help me. Blair Witch Project, Daniel Myrick.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I saw that he was doing something in Orlando, Florida, and I wrote him and said, I loved your film. Is there anything for me? And he wrote back and said, Sally Kirkland. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, let me think about it. I never thought about it. And then he wrote me back after a period of time and he said, there is a part of a gypsy fortune teller, whatever. I'll let you know if it's a go on that film. Well, time went by, a lot of time. This was a year long between him and me back and forth. And he said, that film isn't going, but another one is part of a film anthology called Black Veil. Can I fly you to Florida to star as whatever her name was in Black Veil? And I said, sure. And that's how that was done. And that's happened quite a few times. The film that I'm about to tell you that you can see right now, Hope, Hope, for the holidays. It's a little
Okay.
late because it's after Christmas, but it's going to play all year. Hope for the Holidays is touching. It'll make you
Mm-hmm.
cry in a good way. And I play the mother of a son, and we have a desperate situation because I have cancer. And it's very uplifting, believe it or not. And that film came to me through seeing on Facebook that a guy named Ricky Borba in Sacramento was doing a film called The Something Tree.
Giving Tree, Living Tree.
What?
The Giving Tree. That's Shel Silverstein.
Maggie would know. But anyway,
She
so
can type it in chat if she wants, and I can say it. If
okay,
she wants to type it in chat, I'll say it.
okay. So it was a something tree, and the talking tree, and I wrote him, and I said, "Is there anything there for me?" And he said, "Well, as a matter of fact, and as word goes, they had that part slated for Leslie Ann Warren,
Mm-hmm.
but they got kind of intrigued with my reaching out, and they did a lot of homework on me. And Ricky and I kept communicating via Facebook for many months, and not many months. That happened rather quickly. And he said, I love your work, and I would love for you to play the mother in The Talking Tree, which we shot 2 years ago in Sacramento, but it just came this Christmas season to Amazon Prime Video Rentals, $4.99, and you can see me break your heart in Hope for the Holidays. So you get the drift of what I'm saying. Even though my manager got me Lilith in Virginia, um, the various things I've done since then, I've gotten myself. One guy just called me out of the blue for Bobcat Moretti and said, I love your work. When I wrote this, I thought of you in mind. And we did the deal right there.
And
And
then,
then there's a film that I don't have the lead role in, but I have what's called a star cameo. I have 3 scenes. It's
uh-huh.
called Sarah Q. It just came out on Amazon Prime Video Rentals. And it's with all the guys from The Sopranos and Burt Young and a young girl named M. Tan. And your friend and mine, Maggie Wagner, is in it. And unfortunately, the director who I love, John Gallagher, multi-award winning director, who did The Deli, who did all these cult films,
Mm-hmm.
Blue Moon with Ben Gazzara and Rita Moreno. He died 2 months ago before he
Oh,
could come out. But those two are out. And then my favorite film in the last couple of years the film got critical rave called Cuck, Cuck. It was compared to The Joker. 3 critics said it was more authentic than The Joker. And it's with Ray Sherman, first name Zachary Ray Sherman and Sally Kirkland in Cuck, Cuck. There's another movie named Cuck. Do not be confused. Ours is the one that was done in 2019, and it
okay.
came out in 2020. And anyway, it'll blow your mind. I tear the scenery apart. I do the total opposite from what I do in Hope for the Holidays, where I'm this sweet, loving person. I am a monster. I think Kathy Bates in Misery.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with me. I do know that you filmed a feature length film where it's about Sally. in
Yeah,
Hollywood called
yeah,
Sally Wood, and it's in
yeah,
post right now. Would you like to share a little bit about that, or is it under
yeah.
wraps?
No,
Okay,
no, I would love to. I would love to.
I heard it's like the who's who of cast.
Yeah. Well, first I'll just say Sallywood came about because a man named Zach Gruber, Gruber, Zach Xaque, was my assistant. I don't know, about 15 or 20 years ago. And he had all these experiences with me. Some of them were horrendous, some of them were glorious, some of them were funny as hell. And he's a writer, and he wrote a screenplay about his experiences with me. And a lot of the film is fictionalized for purposes of being a film, but a lot of it is word for word exactly what he said to me and exactly what I said to him and exactly the situations we got in. And so it's not a documentary, it's a feature film, but I do play myself. And Eric Roberts plays my agent, and Keith Carradine plays my ex lover, and Jennifer Tilly plays Zach. There's an actor playing Zach, his mother, and Maria Conchita Alonso plays somebody in it. And Michael, maybe Maggie can help me. He got an Oscar nomination.
I can
Plays
also call on
Hollywood.
IMDb to help out as well. But yeah, I've heard really good things about it. I also heard, of course, it's a comedy, which, the world needs right now. It's a feature length film. So, we're excited to see when that's coming out. So here we go. I'll tell you, just give me 1 second to do this little click. We've got Eric Roberts, Keith Carradine, Maria Conchita Alonso, Tyler Steelman from 17 again, Kay Lenz from House, Michael Lerner, Lenny Von Dolan, on and on and on and on. So yay for you, How was it filming under COVID guidelines? Would you like to share some tips that you learned so people can feel safer when they go back on set?
Well, when we did Sallywood, that wasn't COVID. But
No.
yeah, I've been on set 4 times since the pandemic, and people have been great. They've followed social distancing perfectly. Of course, at this point, I've had 6 COVID tests. My recent one just came in today. I'm negative. And,
Yay.
and so every time I went to work, I had another COVID test. And basically, there was somebody on set for all of the productions representing, the COVID union guidelines.
Well, I mean,
And
would they take the temperature? Did
yeah,
everybody have to wear masks? Was there hand
yeah.
sanitizing a lot of places?
Okay.
And your
Everybody,
marks far apart, you
uh,
know?
well, number one, yes, everybody wore masks but me and whoever was acting with me. And yes, we hand sanitized. And yes, the social distancing would be potentially different than it would have been without the pandemic. There weren't any scenes where I was on top of somebody, except in Bobcat Moretti, there was a hospital scene where I was dying and my son was next to the bed. And it was a very emotional scene, and screaming, and my hand in his face, and tears streaming down my face. And there were no masks, but everybody on the crew, the director, and everybody had masks. And he, of course, had had a test, and I had had a test.
That's wonderful. So I'm glad that you had those journeys and you were able to still create and be in a protective, safe environment with people that were following the guidelines. I mean, not everybody does, and even though all four of yours did, SAG took the precedence to shut down. I think it was because of Governor Newsom. He basically said, we've got to stop the spread. I mean, they're turning. Depending on what part of Los Angeles you live in, but they're turning ambulances away and saying if you can't resuscitate them before you get here, don't even bother coming. And that's a tough place to put people in. It
Hmm.
really is, because the goal is to get someone who needs to go to a hospital.
Right.
But yeah, so that's pretty exciting. Let's see if let's see what this says. We did talk about, if you want to expound a little bit on how you got your start in the industry. We did talk about your first film with Andy Warhol.
No,
We,
no, no, no. That wasn't my first film.
oh,
If you
good,
look on,
good, because that's what IMDb said.
if
So,
you look on IMDb,
hmm
which was 7 pages, I believe, or 8,
hmm
it goes back to 1961 was my first SAG film. I think it was called Crack in a Mirror. It may have been uncredited, but I was definitely in it. And then it goes from there. And I remember shortly after Crack in the Mirror, I did Hey Let's Twist. Maybe that was 1962. I had been a twister at the Peppermint Lounge
oh, how fun!
in New York to make a living, and the gangs, the mob, would come and they would have guns in their holsters and they would throw $10 up to $50 bills at my feet for my dancing. And so when Hey Let's Twist came along with the Peppermint Lounge, where I had been twisting, I fit right in. And Zora Lampert was a star, and she didn't know how to do it. So because I was an expert at twisting, the director put me in every scene she was in, twisting with her. So again, I got a credit, but I didn't really talk. I just danced through the film, and those are my first couple of films. And then gradually I did more and more. And then Andy Warhol in 1964 said, I want you just to sit in front of the camera, don't move. And I, of course, said, look, I'm not like your underground actors who never trained acting. I've studied with Lee Strasberg since I was 18 at the Actors Studio, and I intend to act. No, 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 I don't want you to act. I don't want you to move. So we left the room, and I did what's called an emotional recall, and there were tears in my eyes. And I was so happy that I was able to act in spite of not moving. But the way the screen test came out in 13 Most Beautiful Women, my eyes are shadowed over, and I had brown hair, lots and lots of brown hair covering up my eyes. So unfortunately, you can't see that I was crying, but I was. And Dennis Hopper was in 13 Most Beautiful Men, and he did the same thing, he being trained by Strasberg. Um, and so that was a big happening. And in fact, Andy Warhol's birthday, he invited me to come out of a cake 15 feet tall with his right hand man, Gerard Malenga. And Mick Jagger was supposed to sing I Can't Get No Satisfaction, which he agreed to. And the last minute, Mick couldn't be there, unfortunately, because of business, but we played I Can't Get No Satisfaction. Gerard and I climbed up the stairs, came out of the cake, did the twist. I had baby oil all over my body. I had an eeny weeny bikini and Ken Scott fake jewelry. And the jewelry went flying all over the place. And then Andy was there for his birthday, so happy. And there was a woman, Enid Nemi, and the next day in the New York Times, the first happening by Andy Warhol, Sally Kirkland, Gerard Malenga.
Wow, that's exciting. That's such a part of history, pop culture.
Yeah.
What was Andy like?
Andy?
Yeah.
Very, very shy. Oh my God. Yeah, he hardly ever spoke. He just was an observer. He was what's the word? What's someone who observes? A voyeur.
Voyeur? Yeah.
He was a
Yeah.
voyeur. He brought his camera and his recorder to lunch with me and said, do you mind, Sally, if I take your picture and record you? And I said, mind you, this was 1964, 65. Had I any idea of what Andy Warhol was to become, I would have said yes, but I didn't. And I was a snob about acting. So I said, Andy, don't take this the wrong way, but I'm an above ground actor. I've trained since I was 18. Your people who do your movies, they don't train acting. They're just people you put a camera on. I don't think that, I'm not sure I want to be identified that way. And he said, oh, I understand totally. And he said he had a crush on my mother, Sally Kirkland, the fashion editor of Life at the time, Vogue before that. And my mother had given Andy his first publicity in 1965 on the pages of Life with all these models in Andy Warhol inspired dresses somehow. And there would be a photograph of people from his films on each page with the models and the dresses. And so he had a huge crush on her. And so I could do no wrong because I was my mother's daughter. He would go with my mother to Studio 54 and dance. She didn't do drugs, but she did drink. And and then jump cut in 1987 when Anna was done. We didn't have money, as I said, for public relations. So I called up Andy and I said, Andy, I hear you have a TV show called Everybody's a Star for 15 Minutes, MTV TV or something. Would you interview me and Paulina? And he said, oh, I would love that. And so we went down in New York to the Village somewhere, and we walked in, and Andy was kind of, he was kind of intimidated by Paulina's gorgeous beauty, number one model in the world. And he knew me, and he said, Sally, would it be okay if I don't interview you, if you and Paulina interview each other, and then I walk through? And I said, well, okay, if that's the way you want it. So that's the way it went on the air. You have to do a lot of research, but I know it's there. Um, Everybody's a Star, or Andy Warhol, MTV, or something. So there.
You have such amazing stories and such a wonderful life. And I remember one time you took me to Nick Nolte's house and showed me a room where the Eagles, I guess, would stay or rehearse.
They live
And
there.
then there was a
A
pool out.
house,
Yeah, well, tell us just, I mean, we don't need to get
California.
into the, yeah, what was that like living with and playing with all these, creatives all on the cusp of your careers? You were just being, all of
No,
you were
no, but
just being.
I was not there when the Eagles lived there.
Oh,
Um, the Eagles lived there whenever back in the day
hmm.
in this big, huge mansion on a beautiful property. And then they sold it to David Foster, the music producer, or somebody like that. And then eventually Nick Nolte bought it. And he was married, I think, at the time and had a son. And and then I had a student at the Lee Strasberg Institute named Clyde, and we were at Starbucks one day in Malibu. I lived at the Malibu Bay Club, and she said, um, "You know this actor Nick Nolte? He's really after me, pursuing me." I said, "Nick Nolte?" And she said, "Yes. I mean, he's an older man." I said, "Nick Nolte, you are not answering calls or seeing? Are you crazy? He's one of the most gorgeous, talented men in Hollywood." And she said, "Oh, she's from England." She said, "Oh," and I said, "Clyde, do me a favor for me. Go out with Nick Nolte." So I did this a lot in my life, and talking to younger women to go out with certain people. So she did, and they ended up having an affair. And the next thing you know, she's moving in with Nick Nolte. And so the first thing she does is invite me over to what was the compound. It had one, two, three, four, five houses on the compound. And Nick said, "How are you doing?" I said, "I'm doing fine. I live in a small room on the beach in Malibu Bay Club." And he said, "Well, why don't you come live here?" Well, my jaw dropped. I said, "What?" And he said, "Well, I have a very nice guest house that you can live in rent free." I said, "What?" And he said, "Sure, you're Clyde's girlfriend. I love Clyde, and I would love it as an artist to an artist if you were part of my artistic compound." So, and he was a painter, and I was a painter, and there was a whole area where you painted. And so I moved in to the guest house, and that became a 5-year experience. Love Nick Nolte, brilliant, brilliant guy. Um, he then married Clyde years later, and they have a daughter now, Sophia, who's probably 9 or 10, at least 10. When I last lived there, she was in Clyde's stomach. Uh,
Oh,
so that gives you a sense of time. But Nick was a huge support for me, and he starred me in a film with himself called Off the Black.
excuse me. Yeah, I think you and I went to the screening of that.
Maybe,
I think
maybe.
so. Yeah, that's what I mean. You're just so personable and you're engaging and I was telling people before you came on that you're really supportive of the independent process,
Yeah.
and then you you testify to that by reaching out to people that you hear are making films. And I remember that you would go out to these film screenings and support people that you've worked with, or things that you were in. And not everybody does that, and it's really important to do that because it is community. It is a family. It's like a live theater where you're a family. Maybe you break up and you move on, but you get back together and you support each other. Could you give us some advice for people just starting out in this particular era? I know it's tough because things have radically changed, but one of the things you suggested was Facebook. But are there any safeguards?
No. Stop there. Get somebody or yourself with a camera to make a short film of you and your friends, and you're the producer and you're the star, and you get somebody to hold the camera and film you. You write the script or collaborate with a friend, and you make a short film anywhere from 5 minutes to 20 minutes and start submitting it. There's so many venues online right now during the pandemic where you can submit a short film, and you will be seen, and you will get inspired to do your next short film. I do a lot of short films all the time. I love it. At any rate, that's how you begin. You can, of course, get with Actors Access and get your picture and resume, and hopefully you engage an agent or a manager. But meanwhile, you do a short film. And for myself, a lot of short films have led to features.
So you would work on a short film and then they would hire you for the next project. Yeah, there's kind of that old adage, out of sight, out of mind. So you have to remind people that you're willing and you're able, and you're still making things happen.
Right.
So,
and Susan, you know better than I do. You go to the festivals where your short film is, and you meet and greet, and you hand out your card, your small business card, or your postcard card with your picture, and you say actor, producer, since you just produced a short, whatever you say on it, with a contact number, and you just, what's the word? You interact with people, and you build a file of people you've met at these festivals, so that they keep in mind.
It's definitely New Media Film Festival for me. We've seen so many things happen. We've seen people get hired to be in projects. We've had a panelist get funded by an audience member. We had a nominee get funded for his feature-length film from the 30-second snippler that was programmed. And a lot of it is you have to be there. So, for example, one Q&A had a CNN journalist as the host. Another Q&A for our STEAM section had a JPL, a NASA, engineer that she was rover for the night shift. I mean, it's not every day you get to meet these people. Oliver Stone was supposed to come one year. Love him. Took a directing class from him. I tell him every time I see him. I don't see him often.
Do I have time to tell a quickie on Oliver Stone?
We would love an Oliver Stone story.
Okay. Well, Oliver used to come to my parties. I gave a lot of Hollywood parties in the 70s and 80s because I was so bored out here. And I gave them in honor of De Niro and Pacino and Dustin and Lee Strasberg, Coppola, Scorsese. They would all come. And Oliver would show up at these parties every time. I think he met his wife, Liz, at one of my parties. People did deals. They did a lot of deals at my parties. Third Encounters was done at my party. And bottom line, when I did an acting class, I've been teaching acting in one way or another for 35 years, and I coach now. But when I was doing a weekly class in Venice, Oliver came as the guest speaker. He had just done Midnight Run and gotten an Oscar nomination as a writer. And he would come back and back. And when it came time for JFK, I called him up and I said, Oliver, my mother was best friends with Jackie Onassis, put her on the cover of Life many times. My godmother and mentor, Shelley Winters, was best friends with John F. Kennedy. You have got to put me in this film. And he said, well, Sally, it's cast. There's no parts. It's all cast. I said, but you're Oliver Stone. You'll think of something. You'll write something for me. And he said, Okay, let me think about this for a few days. So he calls me in 3 days and he says, okay, there are three women who were assassinated because they knew Kennedy was going to be killed. And one was Irv Kupcinet, the talk show host in Chicago, his daughter, who was a doctor or something. The other was Dorothy Kilgallen, the gossip columnist. The other was Rose Cheramy, who worked for Jack Ruby. She was a stripper drug runner. Would you come to my office and improvise all three women? And we'll see whether this is workable. I went to his office. I had an eeny weeny bikini with baby oil, just like when I came out of the cake for Andy. And over that, I had a skirt and a blouse, and over that, I had a jacket with heels. So I started out with the jacket and skirt to be the doctor, Cup and his daughter. Then I took off the jacket and I was Dorothy Kilgallen with the blouse. Then I took all my clothes off, much to Oliver's shock, and I had the eeny weeny bikini. And he said, wow. And he said, okay, can you do heroin withdrawal and dance a bit if you want? And then just let all the emotions go about knowing that Kennedy's going to be assassinated. So I did an improv. The tears started streaming down my face. I wasn't dancing. And I started screaming, they're going to kill the president. And afterwards he said, how did you do that? And I said, well, I've been acting since I was 17, Oliver. I've been acting since 1960. You know, this is what we do. I trained with Lee Strasberg in the Actors Studio. And he said, okay, you got the part. And then he said, Sally, they're threatening my life. I'm getting death threats. You cannot tell anybody that you're doing this part in JFK. I will have my staff fax you. This is back in the days of the fax machine. Fax you information on Rose Cheramy and just absorb it all and get ready to go to Dallas. So day after day, these faxes would come in, more and more interesting things about her. And she danced at the carousel for Jack Ruby, and she did drug runs. She brought up her kid as a single mom. She was a stripper, a hooker, whatnot. And so the time comes to go to Dallas, and I go. And the first scene, if you remember JFK, a woman gets thrown out of the car screaming, you fucking assholes. And it's me. And he said, I'll have a stunt woman fall out of the car. I said, no, 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 no. Have the stunt woman do the master shot. I will fall out of the car. And he said, are you sure? And of course, I always do that. So I fell out of the car. There's blood coming down my legs. Oliver's horrified. But it was a great scene, wasn't it? And then he sent me, last thing on him, he sends me to LA, pulls me back for the hospital scene. He says, what can I do to help you? I said, take me to a strip joint that most comes closest to Jack Ruby's. So he takes me to the strip joint with Kevin Costner. And I, being a former stripper in the Sting and in High Stakes, I go backstage and I say to the strippers, would you mind if I strip with you guys tonight? And of course, I had my eeny weeny bikini. And they said, oh, Miss Kirkland, we're so sorry, but you're not a union member. And I said, oh, I understand. I understand. Okay, thank you. So I went down, sat with Kevin and Oliver. All the strippers are coming over with their boobs hanging out, flirting with these two guys. They're in seventh heaven. They don't know what they did to deserve me to turn them on to all the strippers. And the very next day, we go to the hospital where we're to shoot my scene, if you remember, in the beginning of JFK. And Oliver says, how do you want to shoot this? And I said, well, I want you to shoot the rehearsal, if you will, because I'm a stage actor. And once I've done it once, I'm going to surprise the cast and crew. If I do it 2, 3, 4 times, then I'm going to be bored, much less them. So he said, okay. So I said, wheel me down the hospital hallway on a gurney, and I will be screaming and yelling and crying, getting ready to say the president's about to be assassinated. So he did everything I said. I was shocked. This is Oliver Stone. And the crew wheels me down the gurney. I'm screaming and yelling. The tears are flowing. They wheel me into the room. There's the newsmen and the doctors. And I'm saying, they're going to kill the president, you know, on and on and on. Bandages all over my head. And if you remember the opening of JFK, there's a picture of Jackie getting off the plane, maybe with Jack. And then they keep going back to me, screaming, they're going to kill the president. So when I saw it at the Academy of Motion Arts and Sciences, you could hear pin drop when that scene was done. Because everybody remembered where they were when he was assassinated. And there I was, given this role where I got to emotionalize that moment.
Sally, thank you so much for sharing all of your experiences and wisdom. I love you. Personally, I love you. I'm sure the people here love what you do and love you. And I want to thank you so much for your time. And I want to thank people for signing up. And we are going to sign off. So if you want to wave goodbye, I'm going to click the end session. Bye, everyone. Thank you.